So the automotive sector is critical to achieving net zero global emission by 2050. Since 65 to 80% of emissions an automobile generates are from tailpipe emissions, and corresponding indirect emissions come from fuel supply. The industry has understandably focused on electrifying powertrains. However, to reach the full potential of automotive decarbonization, industry players now must turn their attention to material emissions as well. With this small thought, we will welcome all of you for the Equitable Decarbonization for Automotive Component Manufacturers and Approach, the first session in training series in partnership with ECMA, organized by ISC. Next, please. So these are some webinar guidelines, or you can say housekeeping rules. We'll try to keep it on listen mode only, unless requested to speak. We can add, that is optional, the introductions in the chat. Participants are requested to take survey at the end of the session, so please wait for it. Participants will be sent a follow-up email about the session with the recording and the minutes of meeting. Next, please. So for the agenda slide, there will be two sessions in today's training series. First, we'll have keynote addresses from ECMA India, special address from ASDC India. Then we'll have a positive practice case study from Tata Motors, positive practice case study from Spark Minda, and session 2 will have a panel discussion with participation from TCS, BCG, that is Boston Consulting Group, and TERI. Next, please. So this is kind of a launch of training series, as I had indicated already. It is part of accelerating clean and equitable manufacturing project by ISC India. And we are thankful to Automotive Component Manufacturers Association, ECMA India, for their support and their guidance. The training series will have a diverse topics, focus approach. We'll also try to get expert trainers and speakers. It will be easily accessible online, and at the end of the sessions, like by the few months, we'll have completion facilitation to the participants who have completed the training series. Next, please. So without further ado, let me invite Ms. Huren, who is a program assistant at ISC, to make her context-setting presentation, which will not only set the course of session, but also demystify some of the jargons we are using, or let's say the normal public uses related to net zero. That to focus on automotive component manufacturing processes. Over to you, Huren, please.
Thank you, Zahir. Could I have my slides up, please, Ishwari? Yeah, thank you. So good evening, everyone. Over the next couple of minutes, I'd like to touch upon the concept and impact of net zero emissions, especially in context to the Indian automotive sector. Net zero emissions means cutting the greenhouse gas emissions to as close to zero as possible, with any remaining emissions reabsorbed from the atmosphere. Sectors that are contributing to these greenhouse gas emissions the most at the moment include the buildings, transportation, electricity and heat, and the industrial sector, which includes the automotive manufacturing sector as well. Transitioning to a net zero world is one of the greatest challenges that humankind has faced, and more so when aiming for an equitable transition. It calls for nothing less than a complete transformation of how we produce, how we consume, and how we move about. Net zero is no longer a buzzword, and the voices echoing it will only multiply and get louder over the next years and decades. Can I have the next slide, please? The Net Zero 2050 mission, which has already spurred a flurry of actionable decisions by major players across globally, especially in Europe, in India as well, where we have done the commitments of reaching net zero by 2070. It also includes the automotive sector, which where we have seen a rise in electric vehicle sales. We have seen increase in the marketing of electrical vehicles, and we have also seen a pressure to reduce the manufacturing emissions of the automobiles. 90% of the heavy industry production sector, which also includes the automotive manufacturing sector, will have to operate on low carbon operations by 2050 to be able to reach the global net zero commitments. And the next slide, please. Talking about the India's automotive sector, the automotive sector in India is the 5th largest in the world, and the maximum emissions come from the production at supplier and vendor sites. More than 75% of these Indian auto component manufacturing industries are small and medium enterprises. And in the near future terms, with use phase emissions of automobiles being slated for use, there will be greater onus on the OEMs to shift their focus to manufacturing and material processes. These processes at the moment account for only 20% of the life cycle emissions, but over the decades, these contributions will grow to become third or even higher share of the emissions, approximately in the next coming decades. And with the OEMs, which are aiming to achieve net zero by 2040 and achieving carbon neutrality by 2040, there will be an increasing pressure on the small and medium enterprises to reduce their emissions as they form the supply chain of these OEMs. The net zero transition towards a cleaner and a sustainable manufacturing process actually holds the potential to increase the readiness and the competitiveness of automotive manufacturing sector and the small and medium enterprises that comprise it. At the same time, net zero emission or net zero transition also provides us a platform to be able to improve the gender ratios in the automotive sector and become gender equitable. Auto sector at the moment is at a flashpoint in history, and use of cleaner materials and cleaner manufacturing processes is an immediate need of the hour. I'd like to briefly stop here and ask the listeners for their opinion on what forms the biggest challenges to achieving net zero emissions in the Indian manufacturing sector. Ishwari, could we have the poll up, please? And I would encourage all the participants to give answers in the poll. You can choose more than one option for this. We'll maybe give them 30 seconds. We can end the poll now, Ishwari. It's 45 seconds. Right. So as we can see that all the options that were provided are more or less a challenge towards achieving the net zero emissions. At Institute for Sustainable Communities, we actually aim to the decarbonization and consequent net zero emissions from the auto component manufacturers by creating a pathway for these Indian small and medium enterprises that cater to the automotive OEMs to be able to increase their business competitiveness and give them a strategic advantage through the adoption of green technologies and skilling that will enhance their efficiency, viability, sustainability, and the equity of their businesses. Next slide, Ishwari. Could I have the next slide, please? Yes, thank you. ISC supports the small and medium enterprises by enhancing the awareness around the SMEs for the technologies and effective solutions which are available for decarbonization. It helps in identifying and aggregating the demand for relevant technologies and provides support for the adoption of such clean technologies as well. It helps in making available the funding opportunities for clean technology uptake and in helping in ingraining gender equity into the action towards net zero. Because with gender equity ingrained into net zero, SMEs have an option of leveraging the monetary benefits and other benefits of gender diversity in the workforce. Furthermore, ISC also looks at green skilling and training of the workforce to be able to produce a climate resilient workforce and establishes a local steering alliance which has leaders and experts in the relevant fields which are going to be able to sustain the interventions. Next slide. Taking steps to transition towards net zero early on at this time holds a plethora of benefits for the Indian automotive manufacturing sector and the small and medium enterprises that make it up. It will help with the decarbonization and clean energy promotion, which is in line with the national climate goals, consequently leading to monetary savings, increased market competitiveness through increased energy efficiency and sustainable practices as well. It will also help in the skill development of SMEs and local authorities towards clean technology environment, for thereby reducing the gap between the supply and demand of green labor in the SME sector, for leading to a climate resilient workforce, which is the need of the hour. It will promote the participation of millions of untapped potential workers by including and training women in green skill development, which can help us in tackling problems like that of migration, that of lack of skilled labor locally, etc. Also, considering India's increased climate action at the moment, decarbonization of SMEs also allows them to take advantage of upcoming and existing climate responsive legislation, through which they can gain benefits for their own growths. And finally, there are also long-term benefits from and partnership with important local players who can sustain a proactive and a profitable climate action in the small and medium enterprises within the automotive sector. I'll stop here and I'll hand it over to Zahir from here.
Thank you so much, Furain, for the insightful effort and how you set the whole demystifying context for the net zero in automotive component manufacturing processes. Now, I shall give the podium or the mic to respected Dinesh Ved Pathak sir, who is heading the Automotive Component Manufacturers Association India, ACMA India, for his keynote address. Over to you, sir.
Yeah, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, thank you for the entire team from IFC and the Sustainable Commodities. And I just want to take you back a little bit that when we started discussing about this topic, I think I just saw the poll issue, Ms. Uren, and in fact, it was noted there that panelists cannot vote. It was coming in the red color. There would have been one more addition to that, that I am not aware about the exact topics under decarbonization and all that. I just want to take few points. In year 2003, I remember when my guru, Mr. C. Narsivan, when the Sundaram Clayton got the Deming Prize, and he gave me one checklist, and the checklist name was carbon footprint measurement. And that time he told 2-3 things, and I think I can tell you that what ACMA is doing and what is the plan. But I just want to rewind the cassette a little bit. I think before this net zero or decarbonization, there was one terminology we used to understand called biodegradability or biodegradable material like thermocol ban and all that. And I think that is a starting point in the India. And I remember Pune, there is a national chemical laboratory. And I can tell you in 2006, I visited that laboratory and one of the scientists gave me a thermocol packing box. And he said that I'll make a magic here. And he put that thermocol box, one small, you can say, cutout in a glass of water. And he said that it will melt and I will drink that water. So I think that was a classic example, and I understood what it means to the environment. And even we started understanding what is meant by environment and what is the scale it takes. It takes to degrade the material itself. Like if I put the plastic underground, it will take, I think, 10⁶ years. And if I put a normal crop, say corns, it will take maybe 3 months to biodegrade that activity. So I think whole effort India has already started. And I'm very happy to share today what ACMA is doing. So from year 2003, we were measuring the carbon footprint. And I'm very happy that there are many companies who have improved the carbon footprint. Secondly, that we are also measuring the yield. And we did 2-3 programs also. And regarding the new chapter or the 17 goals of the UN, women empowerment. And I think ACMA comes very fast forward. And we are promoting women empowerment also, that in ACMA awards, if you have 30% or more women employees in your plant, There is no fees to be paid to the ACMA awards. So that is the measurement we are doing. Recently, we have started 2 programs. Sustainable manufacturing program is there for 2 years. And this year, we have already started a program on ESG. Now, I don't want to market my program here because that is not the topic of the day. I would like to bring to the notice of the participant that what is my role as an individual and what is my role as a tier 1 company or a OEM company, because there are many OEMs sitting. I had a meeting with Automotive team also, and I appreciate the efforts of all the OEMs. There is a long pull is going on and push is also going on from both the sides. And there are many examples available today. In nutshell, what we should be doing is that first is the reporting and measurement. And I think we are very weak. That poll didn't have that topic. I think where we are today and where my carbon gets generated, then we can talk about the carbon neutrality. So I think there is a checklist available, but it is scattered away. Some portion is here and there. So I told Huren also that first thing we'll do that we'll publish this checklist on ACMA website so that anybody can come and assess themselves. At least he will be 98% right. Instead of having zero knowledge, 98% right knowledge is fine to start with. So maybe we will assess where we are, and there are low hanging fruits and there are many high hanging fruits also. So for everything, technology is not required. I just want to quote many examples from my programs, and I appeal all the participants to start doing this in their companies with maybe little guidance from us or anybody. You go to the shop floor, you have 3 things. One is the people, another is the machine, and another is the material. Now, people will generate the carbon by transportation and maybe some other waste. When you go to the material, I think that will also generate some waste, but that is not in full in our control because it got some limitations of its design. Now, where is the waste available and the scope available is in turning the raw material into the finished components. It can be any industry. And I can tell you that. So we have a program we are driving from last 20 years. It is called Engineering Excellence Cluster. And we have removed the stabilizers from the machine. We reduced the cooling system from the heaters and chillers and coolers because the energy you are utilizing to operate the high temperature to the low temperature, it is a waste. So I think we are doing fantastic programs and everybody can do that. My only appeal to all the people is that there are many programs run by many people, including ACMA. My appeal is that first request is that try to measure where we are today and take at least 5 projects. If you understand the total psychology about the COP27 and other activity, I think the sustainability should be a main pillar in your MIS system. And yesterday I was in one of the corporate group and we were discussing about that. So you have cost pillar, you have material pillar, you have production pillar. But I don't find there is a pillar called sustainability. So I think if we can insist the people that let us start measuring the efforts on sustainability or any 17 goals or whatever the presentation, we are going to see the case studies also. So I think a drop in the ocean is required to start with. So first thing, my request is that let us become more aware. So ACMA and sustainable communities are coming together to make the people aware. And we are ready to host this and support this because this is not for any profit-making activity. So my request will be like this. Can we understand what is my current status today? And then you can decide that this fruit I can eat or this project I can do myself. This project I do not have the knowledge. Then please do write to us or sustainable communities or other people in the panelists. And we'll find a way to support you. And everything doesn't need a money. We can have a webinar like today's webinar, there is no cost. So I think the will should be there and then the way will be there. Everybody knows that. So my first request is that ACMA has started a program. Please understand, and we are also going to publish a checklist online very shortly. Maybe by 6th March, we have a technology summit. And this year's technology summit is named on the same, how to become carbon neutral. And I will appeal all the people, don't miss that because the whole discussion for the day is on how to become carbon neutral and what are the ways and means for that. So to conclude my statement, we are doing a good job in India. And I think if I measure the carbon footprint compared to America and all that, I can tell very proudly that we are little better than emitting than whatever the other countries, but it is not a good way to say that. We can achieve our honorable Prime Minister's target that in 2030 or 2047. And I think contribution is not possible unless each person contributes something from his household. And my appeal is that let us contribute, start the activity from your household. Waste is a waste. And when I come to the Sonipat, there is a hill of the waste. Waste means the garbage. And every time when I come, at least another 5 meters height has increased. So I don't know how many hills are there. And I think after some days, if our next generation digs some area while going to the picnic, they'll only find the garbage. And if we want to wish that our future generations to remain intact, I think the time has come to take the actions. So let us start the movement from today by making a sustainability pillar in the company, and you get a small team. And वो हिंदी में dialogue है ना, मैं चलता गया और कारवा बनते गया. So even this seminar is like that. Can we make a karwa? Can we make a group of the people? And then I think the Honorable Prime Minister dream, we can contribute to that. So with these few words, from ACMA side, I want to thank Sustainable Communities and my other co-panelists. And I am officially announcing that if you need anybody needs any help, please do write to us. You have many details of both the parties, and we are ready to support you. With this, I wish you all the best, and my apology that I want to leave after 5 minutes because I have scheduled another meeting, but I am going to listen to the recording, and please do share the recording. So with this, thank you very much. Let us become self-sustainable and also make the India sustainable. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir, for discussion-worthy keynote address, wherein you aptly indicated that manufacturing processes will not be able to survive without intermingling the sustainability principles in near future. Excellent thoughts we could hear. Going forward, the sustainability protocols cannot be implicated to the higher strata of operation, and everyone across manufacturing line and supply chain needs to grow, needs to know and practice them, right? This leads to our next addressing, Mr. Ganesh Divekar, who is heading the Central and Western India chapters of Automotive Skill Development Council, ASDC. Over to you, Mr. Divekar.
First of all, good afternoon to everyone, and thank you for inviting me for this kind of session. This is really must and mandatory part for the entire nation as well as globe, because sustainability, without that we can't live. We are the part of nature, and here the topic is equitable decarbonization for automotive component manufacturer. From the last 2 decades, I am working closely with the auto manufacturers. I'm the part of, I can say, ground level blue collar team to now corporate team as a SDC. So here, I'll brief with the point wise approach, how we can move ahead. Already you are moving with some couple of projects, like we discussed with Ishwari, Meghanath ma'am. And the same thing I'll going to update here. First of all, we have to state out, we have to emphasize on pilot projects with the MSME sectors, cluster-based approach, small-scale industry, large-scale industry, and medium-scale industry. There we have to target audience for this one, because already factories are already established nowadays, and few are upcoming factories. So there are 2 factories, existing factory and new factory. Third one, policy and standards. We have environmental standards like ISO 18,000 and EHS, that kind of standards we have in our nation, that we have to follow rigorously. So like that way sir has already told, there should be a pillar. Yes, of course, it should be top driven management work first, then it should be horizontal deployment cross functional team. So that approach we have to utilize with the small micro projects. There we can utilize the solution based approach on sustainable decarbonization. Coming back to the processes, as sir already mentioned, man, machine, material, and the last one is process, because due to the process the carbon has generated. So we have to strengthen this process through the process audits that are already available globally, and everyone can utilize on a ground level. So that process enhancement is the major factor that I can emphasize over here. Then it should be top driven and horizontal approach. So cross functional team should have a small board like 5 years Kaizen, they have boards on the manufacturing lines, though there should be a board for the sustainable communities and decarbonization. So what we generate daily basis, we generate weekly basis and quarterly basis and then yearly basis, that we have to do the measurement. So here I can give the simple approach everybody knows, that is smart approach that we can add with this to deploy at the ground level, that is specific, measurable, then achievable, and smart. Achievable, then it should be a time bound and it should be realistic. So this smart board should have every line, every manufacturer component, workstations. This board will give definitely awareness to individual, those who are working online, and in fact with the top management as well, as to do the monitoring, because without monitoring we cannot sustain. So that way the approach should be there. But these are the some realistic point, that's what I mentioned. But this should be in specific way we have to notified. So as far as policies and detailed standards are concerned, we have to set with the standards, because everything we should measure with the standards with the actual outcome. So we have to do comparison with the standards and actual outcome. There we can tackle these concerns. If there are concerns, we can tackle it. If it is fine, then we can move forward as a small pilot projects. Coming back to ASDC, we have a couple of projects going on currently pan India level. For an example, earlier time we used to go with the end user trainings, but now the approach has quite changed a lot. We are coming with the TOT, training of trainer. In fact, in Pune, from last 9 months, we are going with the training of trainer. There, this factor already we have been added into our curricula. That is 11-week program, and every trainer needs to be trained on this factor also. So that we have been already taken care. And I thought Ishwari has visited that center clusters for this particular aspect. So content, it should be with this factor first of all, that really gives awareness to the trainer. So pan India we have trainer for this TOT Sankalp, that is going on in Pune. Now we are developing 200 trainers in 5 segments, that is manufacturing, R&D, service, and of course quality inspection, robotics and automation also. So these all segments we are covered through the ASDC, through this TOT program. And of course, we are also working on EVs, as like Sector Skill Council of Automotive. We are more with the EVs and upcoming emerging technologies. So this is the current approach going on in Western and Central region as well as Pan India region through the ASDC initiative. Of course, you can just drop me an email at the rate ganesh@asdc.org.in, and you can reach me easily on my phone number. And groundly, I'm available. If you want to see some factories, some small scale industries in Pune, you are heartily welcome. And we are ready to give audit kind of prospectus. We can do the comparison analysis and move forward with the pilot projects. In fact, last time Ishwari and me, here I can mention it, we visited Fronius India. They are come up with the small e-factory warehouse. So like that way, they already given the board, digital board on the road itself, what kind of daily carbon emission they have, and they have come up what kind of solution they deployed at their e-factory warehouses. So, and of course, Mitsubishi Electric also have had this e-factory here in Pune. So this kind of role model we can utilize to further deployment for the small scale micro workshops level with the small Kaizens activity. So that is a constructive team effort, and we would like to do the initiative from our end as an ASDC. And that's it from my end. And all those who are listening, I thought 45 plus participants are there. They can write us, and on website also we are easily approachable here. So thanks a lot for giving an opportunity. Rest of the time you can go ahead. After 5 minutes I'll also leave because there is another meeting. But yes, I'll just check it out the recordings, and I would love to support for this program. This is the nation initiative, and this is for noble cause and globe cause, and we have to survive for more years, and the pandemic has taught us the same way. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ganesh Devekar. As Mr. Devekar explained, the importance of knowledge sharing and authenticity of skills needed to make sure the sustainability is practiced in auto component manufacturing sector. It becomes necessity to look out for the positive cases which are already practicing this criteria. This brings us to the case study on automotive industry's vision for the net zero movement by Mr. Samdarshi, who is the DGM of corporate sustainability at Tata Motors, the company who can be considered as a veteran change maker and the flag bearer kind of in the positive efforts in the auto industry. Over to you, Mr. Samdarshi. I would also request Ishwari, if there is a presentation change on screen, please do it now.
Thank you, Zahir.
Over to you,
And
Mr. Samdarshi. Yeah.
Thank you, Zahir. I'm audible?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you, Zahir, and thank you, organizing team, for inviting me to this event. Ishwari, may I have the presentation, or I can project if you want. Yes, I can see. Can put it in slide. So by the time that slides come up, how I have structured today's presentation is basically three parts. First, I will try to speak about what kind of vision we have set for ourselves and how we are trying to enable that across various pillars of planet resilience, and followed by a one slide approach on what the team can, or let's say the audience today can follow to in fact start on this journey. And in fact, my suggestion would not be much different from what Mr. Dinesh spoke about. And lastly, I would speak about a successful use case and a very low hanging fruit that probably most of you would already have either capitalized, and if not, we would request you to immediately work on that or immediately start with that journey. It will definitely, it's one way to prove that sustainability does not come at a cost. It is definitely a business positive situation, and that's how we have to actually think about every problem in the domain of sustainability. So next slide, please. Right. So at Tata Motors, we have made some very bold commitments, and these commitments are out public now. First commitment, or the first pillar, is on net zero, where we have committed that by 2040, our passenger vehicle segments, the cars that we manufacture, will be net zero by 2040. And for our commercial vehicle segment, will be net zero by 2045. Now, I take special pride in mentioning this because if you look globally, not only India, if you look globally, none of the commercial vehicle manufacturers for its entire fleet of such heavy and medium applications have actually committed to such bold targets. And given that the context of India, where we are in terms of infrastructure readiness, in terms of technology readiness, or let's say in terms of readiness of the fuels that will be used to enable that, a lot of ground is yet to be covered, both from technology side, infrastructure side, policy side, and all these elements are actually being worked upon, being pioneered by the company to enable this 2045 vision. So these are not just statements, but actually very solid work on the ground going to enable these elements that we're speaking about. The next pillar is on circular economy. The idea is that, so definitely we cannot have infinite growth from a finite set of resources. So we have to leverage how do we utilize our resources maximum, how do we reduce the resource pressure on earth and still continue to grow. And that's where circular economy comes into play. And there are certain matrices and targets that we have taken to ensure that we have business models aligned to this particular pillar, ensure that we have designs, processes, and functions aligned to this particular pillar of delivering circular economy. The last pillar is on nature and biodiversity. Now, if you look at the concept of nature and biodiversity, is probably one of the most ignored topics in sustainability talks, especially in terms of corporates. But at Tata Motors, or in fact, not only Tata Motors, the entire Tata Group, the task that we have taken at hand is first of all to understand what kind of impact we have caused on this because of biodiversity. Because of our operations. And once we assess those impact, and these are pure play science data-based calculation as to what was the extent of our impact. Once we assess our impact, the next step is actually to take remedial actions to counter those impacts. And not only counter those impacts, but actually create a net positive impact. And that's what the third pillar talks about. So these are some pretty bold commitments that we have done. And next slide, please. And these commitments are not just commitments. There are actually actions I was mentioning is actually happening today as we speak. So if we speak about net zero, our product strategy for next 14, 15 years is completely on roadmap. right R&D activities have kicked off. We know that what product is to be sold at what percentage in what year. So that kind of detailing has been done at a strategy level. Our RE100 roadmap is in place. Now, RE100 is an initiative that Tata Motors is signatory to. The commitment here is that by 2030, all the electricity that we use in our operations will be fueled by renewable energy only. Now, the grid in India, actually, they are also on a journey of greening the grid, but it will happen in due course of its time. So Government of India, it has taken a target of 2070, and we hope that by 2070, the entire grid will be green. But we have taken this target of actually going to 100% renewables by 2030. And in fact, that's a public commitment that we have made, but internally we want to do it much earlier. And that's how the roadmap we have laid down for. And we'll speak about in detail in the successful case studies that I'll be speaking about in the later part of the slide. We are committed to something called science-based target. A quick summary of science-based target is that sustainability just cannot be anecdotal events where we plant, let's say, 10,000 trees or 1,000 trees and say that, okay, yes, we can do it. It has to go beyond a certain level of just, glossy pictures and cuddly animals. So the idea here is that science-based target initiative, that organization actually validates that whatever we are planning to do or whatever decarbonization roadmap that we have put ourselves on, whether or not it aligns with the science of climate. So that's what science-based target does. So we have committed to science-based targets. Our targets are under validation. The validation will begin soon, but that's where we are. That explains how, let's say, committed we are to the cause of this net zero. On the pillar of circular economy, while resources definitely a huge focus, there are targets of being water positive and being zero waste to landfill by 2030. That's again a huge target, being water neutral or water positive for all your operational sites, having zero waste to landfill for all operational sites. And mind you, we have foundry operations also. Foundry sand is a big element, and we are trying to find out very innovative ways to actually deal with that kind of waste. And with that kind of a stretch, such targets have been taken. Also, when we speak about circular economy, so this topic is actually very noble. When I say noble, it is, while in practice to some amount of recyclability or let's say reuse has always been part of our culture, or let's say in across globally also, people have been trying to use at max what is possible usage of a particular item. But when it comes to implementing it at an organizational level, what we need is actually a framework to measure it, because unless and until you measure it, you cannot improve it. So what we are trying to decipher is that what should be the right framework that we should be using across our departments, across our functions, which would help us to enable to understand where we are in terms of circularity, set up some bold targets, and then chase those targets to deliver this in true sense. So that's where the second pillar comes in. Biodiversity, I briefly spoke about. So we are doing the baselining activities actually undergoing as we speak today. So experts are there on our sites trying to assess how much of damage we would have done. And then later on, the plan is that we invest into nature-based solutions to actually counteract whatever impact we would have created. And not just counteract, we actually do much more than what damage we have done. We also recently held something called a biodiversity conference for our senior leadership, where we had invited about 8 very experts of this biodiversity domain. So, for example, we had speakers speaking on wetland conservation or grassland conservation, trying to educate us, actually, us and our leadership, as to what are the potential, how business and biodiversity can merge, what areas can we actually look at where we can create or pioneer the area of nature-based solution projects. Yeah, next slide, please, Noreshwari. Yes, and on this journey, we have also invited our supply chain members, all our supply chain vendor partners, to actually look at this entire approach of being sustainable, not as a top-down initiative or something, let's say, a client or a vendor relationship, but together be in this journey as a partner. And that's what we are. And the next slide, you'll see what initiative we have kicked off to enable this. But the idea here is that let us define our vision together. So while Tata Motors may have taken a target of net zero, let's say in 2045, what should be the net zero target, right? Or just targets for our supply chain partners. So let's define those. So let's evolve from being in a typical relationship to actually being partners together into towards the sustainable goal. The next step is, once we define our vision, let's develop our roadmap also. In what year, how much we will do, how will we be measured, what metrics would best suit to a supply chain partner to actually measure and report against. So let's build a resilient and a strong ecosystem. So that's what the core principle is. And eventually, yes, deploy these actions to actually make the changes, or let's say see these changes in action, and eventually handhold each other. When we say handhold each other, if there are cost learnings to be shared, if let's say one of the casting suppliers has come out with some innovative ways to reduce, let's say embodied emissions of casting item, then maybe it can be shared with other manufacturer also. And if it is a good idea, why not be cross shared, do learn them. So that's what we are asking our supply chain partners also to come along this journey, rather than it being a one-way download of this is what I want and you give me that. So that's no way the time. I mean, we are way beyond that kind of a time. And that's what we are evolving to. Next slide, please. And in this regard, what we have launched, and we made this announcement last, I think, September, yes, last September, where we have kicked off a forum called AQM. So AQM is a Sanskrit word, stands for unity. And the idea here is that we have a think tank, or let's say a forum of CEO and CSOs of some of the select vendor partners of our company, I mean, out of Tata Motors, along with employees of TML, where we get together to understand and collaborate, do some kind of innovation, do resource sharing, do cross learning to understand if the challenge, because similar sector will have similar problem. If a sector has solved, or let's say a player of that sector has solved that problem, why cannot that same solution be percolated to other members of that sector also? So the idea here is that we create a collaborative platform which meets every quarter, and we brainstorm the typical challenge, we discuss the progress, we discuss how to overcome if there is specific set of challenge. If there are success stories or winning stories, we share them within the ecosystem, so that it becomes a lighthouse project to actually guide people into this journey. So it actually fits very well into the agenda of not asking them to do, but actually working along with them to deliver what our vision is also. So it is not TML's vision. It does not remain TML's vision of net zero. It becomes our cumulative vision of net zero. And that's how we want to progress. So this is what we have launched in September, and we are about to operationalize it very soon. Final member selections are almost done. And this is also where we will associate with different industry bodies to seek in their expertise also, because since this is a collaborative forum, we need all hands on the deck to actually deliver this. And that's what the plan is. Next slide, please. Right. This brings me to the second portion of my presentation, where I was asked to actually how should people who are yet to start on this journey should do. I have laid down some very simple 5 steps. May not seem very jazzy, but they are very powerful. The first suggestion that I would have for all the listeners who are yet to start, many would already be there or maybe much mature than what we are, but people who are yet to start, the idea is you start measuring your basic matrices. You can start with your greenhouse gas, water emission, water consumption, your waste, what types of waste you are doing. You may not, you may not require an expert to actually look into this, understand this. All the study materials, or let's say academic knowledge that you need to do this is available online. You can dedicate some man hours of an existing source and actually ask him to go through what is required. Start measuring these, and once you start measuring this, then only you will understand what is your footprint, what are the complications. You may realize that you will have to put certain processes in place by which you are able to measure also. So one of the biggest challenge for an OEM, or let's say any company, is that what kind of visibility it has on its footprint. So the first step is to tackle that. Start measuring, start with very basic elements of GHG, water and mix, and then keep expanding it to, let's say, 100 more matrices of ESG. So ESG is environment, social and governance. So start with these basic elements, but continue to expand to more and more metrics. When you start measuring it, you would understand what your footprint are. The next step is to reduce these footprints or improve on these metrics. So set some targets, set some long-term targets, percolate that long-term targets into your yearly targets as well. What should be my target for this year? What should be my target for next year? When you set some targets, you would probably need to require to do some benchmarking as to how the world is moving, or consult some experts like ACMA and all, or even reach out to the relevant parties to understand what is their vision. What type of target would they be expecting from you to actually deliver upon? And that's what the step 2 is about. Set long-term targets, set short-term targets. Then third aspect is to translate this target function-wise. So let's say if I speak about net zero target, so let me take an example of Tata Motors. So when I say net zero, so net zero for my R&D function would mean that they have to deliver products which are tailpipe zero emissions. Net zero, the same metric of net zero for my operational, let's say plant people would mean that they have to increase their RE percentage, renewable energy percentage. Net zero target for my sales team would mean that they have to sell a certain portion of zero emission vehicles in their sales model, in their sales. So the same target has to be percolated in different functions in actionable form so that they can actually work towards it. That's step 3. The fourth item is evaluate the levers. So once a function understands that what are the targets that I have to work upon, the team will then have to evaluate what are the levers available to them to actually deliver on those targets. And whatever cost is implied, how much of benefit, how much of cost, all this has to be brought into the table, discussed with management. What are low hanging fruits, what are short term action plans, what are long term action plans. And then once you freeze on them, you go to step 5 and do what is called act. So start acting on those identified levers, start acting on those, let's say those levers which you have, let's say low hanging fruits that is there. And once you act, you will automatically see that in your repetitive cycle of measurement, some improvement has started coming in. And that's how you continue to keep this cycle on. So that's a simple 5-step process that I would like to suggest for team members who are yet to start on this journey. Next slide, please. So I'm going to talk about switching to renewable energy, because this is something that we are going ahead with full-blown speed right now for all our operational sites. Next slide, please. So Tata Motors is actually committed to something called RE100 that I spoke about. We have also committed to science-based targets, where we have to decarbonize at a rate that is in line with climate science. And as I spoke about, we're also committed to being net zero by 2040 and 2045 for our CV vehicle, 2040 for our passenger vehicles. Now, while we have done this exercise and we are on the path of progressing towards it, and many times you would also be finding news articles of 7 megawatt, let's say solar project, or let's say some 14 megawatt rooftop project. These projects keeps coming in the newspapers. But I want to say that going to renewables was actually a no-brainer for us. So when we did the entire evaluation, we are actually making good amount of money when we switch to renewables. When we move away from the grid, when I say away from the grid, move away from black power to renewable power, because renewables is actually cheaper than black power. Generation of electricity using solar panel or windmills is per unit is actually cheaper than generating it through coal. So that's a hard reality. So what I would request, let's say if the team members had to follow suit and say that they have to take something, a low hanging fruit immediately for action, shoot for RE, shoot for renewable energy. I mean, increasing the renewable energy content within your compound, within your operation. Start with baselining, understanding what are your power consumption. Do you have some setup already there? Then assess different options that are there. What would are the different procurement levers available to you at your site? Because power is a concurrent subject. There is a lot of complications involved in terms of policy at state level and at center level. So figure out what is applicable to you, what is not applicable. All the policy documents are available freely online. You can find them, do some amount of research, and you'll come to a conclusion. Then assess your options, what options are there. Then strategize as to what levers you would want to exercise. Once you have access strategize, so let's say if you suggest, you come up with a roadmap that, okay, I will maximize my on-site solar to first end, then I will go to off-site, then off-site wind or hybrid. So strategize based on what your appetite is, what the regulation is allowing you to do, and then implement those actions and keep monitoring whether or not you are making progress, because every step that you take should give you some calculated returns, whether or not you are actually meeting. Do some corrective actions if required. So with this, I would like to end. Next slide, please. So that's all that I had to share in the quick 15 minutes that I had. Hopefully it was helpful to the team. Happy to have any questions, if any.
Thank you, Mr. Sandarshi, for sharing the existing and inspiring work Tata Motors is doing to achieve carbon neutral automotive industries. Tata Motors has never failed to amaze their stakeholders with their approach and practices. Now we shall move ahead with another positive practice case, wherein we can see the experience will be narrated with the barriers and bottlenecks, with the ways to overcome them. That is, I think, the excellent process any organization or an kind of entity would go through. And for the net zero MSMEs, it is kind of a difficult one to overcome and to achieve that. This will be taken by Mr. Praveen Khan, who is the head of sustainability at Sparks Minda. Over to Mr. Khan. I would request Ishwari to open the presentation.
Thank you.
Over to you,
Thank you,
Mr. Khan.
Zahir. Thank
Yes.
you very much. Are you going to open the slides for me? Wonderful, great. Thank you very much. So how much time will I have, Zahir, if you can guide me?
So you will have 15 minutes allotted, but as we are overshooting a little bit, if you can like wind it up maybe a little early, I will indicate. Yes.
Definitely. I'll try my level best doing that. So
Thank
great day of learning for me, I must say. Thank you very much. Namaste to all of you. My name is Praveen Kern, representing Minda Corporation Limited, which is also known as Spark Minda Group, and willing to share here some of our practices of sustainability. How are we trying to follow the footsteps of the bigger vision of Honorable Prime Minister 2070? And I also heard that if the country has to be net zero by 2070, then the automobile sector has to be net zero by somewhere close to 2050, 55 maximum. And if that is so, then the OEMs are taking their, they are the stewards, and they have taken up the step. We just heard Samdarshi ji about it, and we as an component manufacturers and suppliers to our OEMs, we also have to follow those footsteps. And importantly, the bigger agenda is definitely to take care of the environment. We know about the heat waves, which is multiplying 10 times comparison to last few decades. We also know about the GDP losses, which has gone more than 5% up comparison to the previous years. We heard about the sea levels, the temperature rising by 1.5 degree. And we are aware about all these problem statements. Well, I would like to share that once I was talking to somebody in a chit chat, and I asked the person that you are running a business and you are not doing anything for the environment. What and why are you doing like this? So the person said that, why should I do this? If I'm using electricity, I'm paying for it. If I'm taking water, I'm buying the water. And then therefore, why should I be bothered? This is not my responsibility. And this is where, we are all mistaken, and we are not able to think about the sustainability. If there's no water, there's no business. If there's no electricity, there's no power, you can't run your business. So if you're not having all these things, you cannot run your business. So you would not sustain, nothing would exist in that case. And none of us, for that reason, we heard about 2075 that Andaman Nicobar is going to be erosioned in the water. What would happen after that to the habitats out there? And there are many other things that we are hearing day by day. So the climate risk, which is the problem statement, which definitely is there. So each one of us have to do something. As an organization, what are we doing? We as an automotive manufacturer trying also to bring into those green practices, environment friendly practices, which would support us, which would support the environment, and which would bring the ecosystem as a whole to become sustainable. If you can bring in the next slide, please. Next again. Well, we have done few things. We were traditionally been doing and measuring ourselves for close to 15 years. That how many, we heard plantation is good. And therefore we started doing it without, knowing this concept of ESG, sustainability and all that. We knew, यदि आप पेड़ लगाएंगे तो इसका नुकसान तो नहीं है, फायदा होगा. पेपर बचाएंगे तो इससे पेड़ कटने से बचेंगे. If you are saving electricity, it is going to be retained for you for future. Solar energy is renewable. Water is something which is going to make you survive. We knew these things, and therefore we were doing all few things. And we were just not doing that, but we were also measuring them. Across India, we have 28 factories. And in each of these factories, we were trying to imbibe this system. And at times we had to impose this system also to adopt all such practices. But very recently, we also learned that we can organize it in a much better way. So what did we do? If you can bring into the next slide. We meanwhile heard that the entire ecosystem is evolving around this sustainability effort. BlackRock said that we would invest only in those companies who are reporting on environment, social governance. Harvard University is saying that the shareholders gets attracted to those companies only who are sustainably doing their operations. Toyota said that we'll be getting the environment friendly materials. There are customers, and if we have to work with them, we have to do it. Mercedes said that we'll be having only sustainable seats. The seats that it's supplied through the component manufacturer has to be sustainable in nature, has to be eco-friendly. And if we have to do that business with them, we have to do it. Honda said that 90% of our materials has to be should be having recyclability. So this data is also there. You know, these statistics are pulling us to be very much aware about all such things. At the same time, look at our peers. For example, Motherson, they are paying a lot of attention towards solarization. Bosch, they are bringing in their water utilization 25% lesser, and they are making this commitment by 2050. I got this data from somewhere. Denso is going to get neutral by 2035. So the ecosystem as a whole is evolving towards it. We also tried in the same direction. So after a lot of deliberation among ourselves, we brought in a policy. We call it a sustainability policy. This is towards environment, this is towards the society, this is towards the governance, and we have touching upon all such components. So considering the time constraint, I would not go through this, but I'll tell you that this sustainability policy is a supplementation towards the sustainable development goal, towards bringing in that ecosystem which is sustainable in nature, which is going to benefit us at large, which is going to supplement ultimately towards the net zero agenda of the company. That's the first thing we did. We got an approval from the board about it. We circulated it across all our business. We made people aware about this sustainability policy, that what is this all about, and everybody has to abide by this sustainability policy in our overall system of operation, be that manufacturing, non-manufacturing, operational, wherever. So this is in place today. This we did in the year 2021. Next slide, please. We understand that an framework is required to have that inclusivity concept, the care for people concept, the ethical business, sustainable operation, and just not that, but also the supply chain and the value chain that we have. Therefore, a framework was created. So the awareness was given over these two things, which is the policy and the framework. Next slide. What was important? To implement it, a governance structure, the structure which establishes this policy, this framework, and gets it implemented across our group. So there are 3-tier structure. One, of course, at the board level. We call it a sustainability committee, the board level committee. Then we have the group sustainability committee. And here we got people from different domains. You can see, other than the chairperson, we have the person from human resource, marketing, purchase, technology, treasury. We haven't left any of the functions who somewhere directly or indirectly are going to be associated with this entire agenda and the framework. And finally, at the third tier, you can see the Sustainability Council. Now, this is something which is recommended also if you have many operations within India or anywhere else for that reason, for the component manufacturing. I would suggest you need to have a Sustainability Council in each of your factory, who would be responsible for the implementation of that policy and the framework and the actions which are decided post certain data collection. I will come to data collection also. So this is how we created that governance structure in 2021, and we brought in a report. Where are we today? If you can move on to the next slide, please. So the report brought in certain figures that we can conserve some energy, which is close to 10,000 gigajoule. We recycle 31% of the water which previously we were using. We brought in certain social indicators. We have CSR programs. We brought in the diversity inclusion agenda. We employed around 1,000 people with disabilities within our organization, trained them for how to work on the automotive industry. We have all types of people with disabilities working within our own organization, impacted approximately 11,000 lives. In fact, in February itself, from 1st February to 10th February, we are holding another camp for empowering people with disability, and we'll also be engaging them for employment and skilling, and we have close to 35 partners for this program. So this is how we got certain reports that where are we today? Next slide, please. And then we are deciding upon certain actions. What can we do? How can we conserve energy? How to reduce the emission? Energy management. How can we, what are the processes that we can bring in value add? What are the water practices that we can bring in? How can we recycle, reuse, reduce? All those 3R practices, trying to tap on that, deliberate on that, the capex investment for it, convincing the CEOs for doing it. If not all possible within 1 year, then the years to come, allocation of the budget for the same. And Hurain asked me the other day that have you also kept certain targets for the being net zero? I said, no, I do not have it right today. I'm trying to identify my data. I'm also trying to be very much feasible with my business, where I'll understand that what would be that year when I'll be able to bring in all such manufacturing changes and investment, which is capital investment for bringing in all such changes of green manufacturing. And then I can make that commitment also. But yes, this narrative is there inside. This thought process is there inside. And therefore, if you can bring in the next slide, we are going ahead. We are doing a few things. We did some solarization. We are bringing in some material saving initiatives. If you can also move into the next slide, I'm just looking at the time. We are bringing in those products which are for the people, which are for the environment. For example, you can see ADAS. This is that one technology that we brought in through one of the JVs. This is for road safety. This tells the driver that how could you be protected in a road, and it gives a 360 degrees alarm to you. Likewise, we have IRAS, which is for the two-wheeler. We also have a range of products for EV, electric vehicles. And probably directly I'm not contributing, but if my OEM like Tata, we just heard Samdarshi ji, if they are using these products, then I feel that the job is done, which is for the net zero. Our efforts are integrated. Next slide. One small case study I would like to present. One of our customers to whom we are supplying our locks and keys in a plastic bag. And they somehow approached us and they said that, how can we replace it? We said that, yeah, why not? We have some of the ways we can do it. Can we do it in a cloth bag, which can be used 2, 3, 4 times? And the customer got ready. We got it stitched by the women who are in and around our factory, who are being impacted through our CSR programs. We taught them stitching, tailoring, and they manufactured these bags. 36,000 pieces of first lot is already gone to our customer. They are pretty happy with that. And the money that they have paid Trust me, it was a little more than the plastic bags. And they were quite happy that these women are being remunerated also, because this dispatch is done in these bags. Now these bags are coming back to us and we can use it 3-4 times. We calculated the carbon footprint will reduce by 3.5 kg CO2 per kg of the plastic removed. So I just took one of the examples that this is how we can bring in changes. These small things can bring bigger change towards the bigger agenda of net zero. Can I have the next slide? Okay, so these are the women, you can see they've been doing it. If you can move to the next slide, they are able to earn around 15,000 rupees in a month. So see, this is the roadmap. 22 to 23, we are collecting data. We would be doing the gap assessment. What are the areas of intervention? Capacitating the team is very, very important. The entire, workforce today is not aware how to deliver it. Yes, the basics are there with the people, but again, the capacity building is going to play a very, very critical role. BRSR will be doing, that's mandated now. ESG report, we came out this year also. In a 15 days time, we are coming out with a new report that will continue. GHG, now scope 1, scope 2 is easy. Scope 3, tricky. We have to do it. Scope 3 for Tatas will be done by us. Scope 3 for us will be done by our suppliers. And we are looking at and trying to map all of them. मुझे और भी वक्त होता तो मैं उसमें समझाता कि हम लोग कैसे जाने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं, but I'll restrict myself. And of course, next to that is SBTI, which is Science-Based Target Initiatives. Sandeshi ji also talked about it, and TCFD, which is the plans for the years to come. So the roadmap is there, and we are trying to do it. If you can move to the next slide. Oh, that's my last slide. But before I close, with this 2, 3, 4 years of organized effort and last 10 years of unorganized intention, what is my learning, which I'd like to tell you? Data is important. We have to know where are we today. That will lead towards the action, first point. Second, policy framework has to be there. Therefore, it's good idea to start thinking about it, to get it for your organization, to get it approved from the board. If there's a policy, if there's a framework, people look at it, people try to comply to this. Third, the governance structure will have a role to play at the centralized level in the corporate or at the manufacturing level at different plant locations. That's my third suggestion or observation, I could say. The disclosure and the transparency is going to be important. Fifth, replication and scale up will only happen if this entire system works like this. 4 recommendation I would like to make from my desk to ECMA, being the member of ECMA. Maybe we can have one compendium, annual compendium, where these good practices can be printed and can be circulated. Awards and acknowledgements, they do boost people to work better. Somebody who's a water champion, somebody who's a plantation champion, somebody becomes a solar champion. We can have 4, 5, 6 categories of awards, and annually we can plan it. The sustainability professionals are less in the country. It's tricky one. We need to think about it, and therefore we'll have to plan some of the programs with academia, those who are offering these sustainability courses. So they are less. The organizations are confused. Kisko banai a sustainability champion? Who is the green manager? There's the CSR person or an engineer of the company. The engineer would not understand the social prospects of it, and the social guy would not understand the calculation of carbon emission. So a combination of it. And fourth and last recommendation from my side would be to have a sustainability committee as a mandatory committee. Maybe if not today, in an year or two, ECMA should make these recommendations. So that's all from my side. I look forward for further collab, and I look forward further to learn from all of you. Thank you very much for this opportunity to all of you.
Thank you, Praveen Kansa, for this excellent presentation that we saw. And none of it was actually kind of a thought only. It is practiced. It is like tried and tested. And it's kind of a running a government from the start of it, from the freedom point of it. I mean, it requires a lot of effort, a lot of thought process, a lot of conviction to go around it. Now we'll go for a poll. I would request Ishwari to release the second poll, and I would request all the participants to answer to it, because the question and answer section will be dependent on this. And I would also request Praveen Kansar and Samdarshi ji to be there in case we have some questions for you. Yes. Please take the poll. It will be on for 30 seconds. Great. So I think the trends are quite amazing. What are the interventions the automotive sector can leverage for the reaching at net zero emission before 2030? I mean, that's a quite a target, but the whole vehicle runs on to the energy efficiency and renewable power. Apparently, that's quite a bit we as a OEMs and every stakeholder has to invest to. I think the second one is coming to the resource efficiency. There is a close call between green skill trainings and workforce and resource efficiency, which is again not just focusing on energy but also on water. What are the leakage pointers? And we, as Praveen Kansal said, we need to have those people who are skillful enough to identify those leakages and work around it. Okay. Thank you so much for giving your answers to the poll. Now we'll open for a question and answer. And as a person who is moderating this whole session one, I will take the lead and ask the question to Samdarshi ji as well as Praveen Kansal, just to initiate the conversation. Let us see, as Praveen sir, you said that you have been employing the diverse group of people, and you have been doing the efforts to include those groups who are not able to reach out to when it comes to the technical scaling, or let's say sustainability quotient. I mean, they are not usually left out. How difficult was it for you as an organization to include them, so we can learn from this and we can have similar principle involved for the equitable decarbonization processes in the automotive component manufacturing sector?
All right, should I?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, it was difficult initially, to identify those catalysts who could actually drive this entire agenda. So I tried understanding that who from our own system can do it. And then the first idea that came to my mind was that why not I have my own CSR guys, first of all. So the corporate social responsibility professionals, I have a team of close to 30-40 people. Checked with them that do you also have some background of environment, resource protection, carbon emission, sustainability. I did not find much of the convincing answers, honestly speaking, out of it. And then I approached an organization, an academia, and from there I engaged a green manager who was the sustainability expert, and I brought him on board with us. But that was also not sufficient. So then I onboarded one of the big four, and this big four is our consultants for a period of 3 years. So they capacitated our team, who are the part of the CSR team, who are also the part of human resource, secretarial, legal, a few from the procurement side, and the capacity building was organized at different level. At the topmost level, of course, from the chairman to the executive committee, and then the sustainability committee was also been told that what is this concept all about. And now they are working out with the implementation team, what I talked about, the Sustainability Council. So this council is consisting of people from human resource, corporate social responsibility, operation, maintenance, admin, and compliance. So these 5 members are necessary. They are mandated to be the part of the councils at the factory level, and then like these people are being capacitated for driving this policy and the agenda. And we are also looking at the gaps. I look forward. I'm pretty affirmative about getting the actions done, and I can't say much, but yeah, things are going good so far. We identified a few gaps, and those gaps are able to be mitigated through these people. It was difficult, Zahir, honestly speaking, but I would not say that it is not possible. It's very much possible. This is a new learning which we have to extract from the existing system. The system was already there. We knew that we have to save energy. We converted from LCD to LED. Everybody did it. The intent was important.
Yes.
The building that you have, we all know that we had a building, but the rooftop were not solar. So the intent was to solarize it through on-grid and off-grid. Solutions are also coming today. So we're trying bringing in all such things. We failed also a little bit in few things. We did fail the sustainability of the saplings that we planted in the areas which were outside. Who will take care of that? And therefore, the sustenance of those plants were as less as 60%. However, if within our plant it was close to 90%. We failed there. But again, like we thought that this is not how we have to go about. If we'll go outside, then we'll have to have somebody who would adopt that sapling to grow. That was the learning point. I'm just taking one of the examples, Zahir. Yeah.
Sure. I think that answers the concern and the query there, that you have to learn from the trial and error, and you need to grow step by step, continual and gradually. The next concern I had for Mr. Samdarshi when I was listening to his presentation, his speech. Tata Motors particularly is kind of a role model for all those who are participating today, right, in this training session. But how did Tata Motor started all this, initiated the whole thing? And if one person from a small company, from a small automotive component manufacturer, or let's say automotive company, has to look for the sustainability principle implementation and implication, positive implication of it, which are the resources they can use or they can access to, as per your suggestion?
Okay. So how did we start it? So to be honest, even before this was the mega trend, Tata, and not Tata Motors alone, Tata Group in general always has this ethos embedded in the way they do business. So doing good for society, doing good for planets is definitely something that was built in way before even being sustainability was actually cool. So that's where we started from. What has happened recently is that now our initiatives has found science. So erstwhile, let's say if I take example of my Pune plant. So some of you may be familiar with Pune plant, and we have a huge lake house. I would say wetland conservation area that has been created within Tata Motors, and let's say within Tata Motors premise. And that wetland conservation has actually now become a site for migratory birds. So many papers have been published on it, and it came from a vision of Mr. Sumant Mulgaon for long time back. That time business was not needing it. There was no need to do it, but he felt that there is something that we should do. So we started the journey there. But recently what has happened, because now climate change is actually now and here, what events were happening or occurring at multi-decadal, let's say at space, now it is happening once or twice every year. Now you see global commitments on net zero, you see India's commitment on net zero. Now, having said that, or knowing that these things are going to be an imperative, Tata Group has also taken upon its mantle to actually push those boundaries and actually go net zero much before that. And net zero is just one of the commitment. The idea was that how do we pioneer this space? The basic idea of chairman and the group entirely was that if it is not us, then who? So simple answer, we started off with that. And then the new and the renewed strength of what we are doing with sustainability is basically backed up by science. So whatever we are trying to do, whether or not science supporting or that or not. So suppose plantation of trees concerned, or the same lake house example. So while we may feel pride that, okay, that lake house is doing so good for the environment, but have we really assessed what kind of dent it is making on the actual impact? Is it actually making a significant impact on what? There are about 5,000 trees up there. So, but are they actually making any significant impact if we compare our scope 3 emission? So science is the new regenerating factor in our all sustainability conversations these days. So that's what we have found. And that's more recent development as compared to earlier. So I think that answers the first part of your queries, how we have did. So there was something before. Now, because of global commitments and a self-motive to do good for the nation, do good for the people and planet, we are coming up with more stringent requirement, more stringent target for ourselves to actually deliver upon. Coming to where do we find the right resources? So I don't think there is a one-stop solution to that. But what I would request some basic things to start off with, team members can actually go and research on GHG protocols. They can look at webinars of SBTI, they can look at webinars of GHG protocol, how to measure what is covered, what is not covered. It is so extensively available on internet, no? Anyone. So I am also not a sustainability professional by, let's say, by education. It is only through practice that I have learned something. So I would suggest that anyone can go on internet today and learn about, start with basics of accounting, start with GHG, because emissions most of us understand. So it is something relatable. People understand the concept that, okay, what it is, see how it is measured, how it is impacting, what is the global commitments happening, what innovations are being done in those space. Start with something basic, start with GHG protocol, then you move on to, let's say, circularity. Go to Ellen MacArthur's website and you'll find a lot of elements there. You can Google WBCS, this circular car initiative, and you can find how circularity is now being is actually efforts are being made to embed circularity into business models. So these 2-3 starting points I would suggest, but there is no end to this. It's simply a universe when you deep dive into this area of sustainability. So there is no amount of reading that will post which you will say that, okay, now I'm an expert. We are still learning 2 years even after this journey started, and we'll continue to do that. But start with basics of GHG, basics of circular economy. Biodiversity is actually a much more evolved science, and there are very limited number of experts globally, unfortunately, who can actually merge science into plantation of trees and species and floras and fauna. So it will still take some time where it becomes absorbable by normal mass, but people can read about SBT and science-based target networks. So which is actually about setting science-based targets for biodiversity. What I spoke about was science-based target initiative, which helps us set targets for GHG emissions. People can read about SBT's science-based targets. These would give them a fair idea where to start with. Yes, right.
I think that answers the whole lot of query here. Participant can put in their question and we can take it later. I think we are overshooting time, but just to summarize what Samdarshik sir and Praveen sir indicated here, that there is no one bracket wherein this whole sustainability idea of automotive component manufacturing or automotive industry can be operated. It has to be subjective, it has to be like conviction driven. And we will obviously be discussing in the session 2, wherein the finance and the institutional part of it will be discussed, including the gender aspect of it, how women can be included in the MSME operation and sustainable manufacturing processes. So thank you so much, Praveen Khan sir and Samdarshi ji, for excellent views. I think we have learned a lot from the case studies because they have been practiced, they have been indicated with the exact operation, exact and actualization. So thank you so much for your time and your availability here. Now I would request Ishwari to open for the session 2. Ishwari will be moderating the panel discussion. We'll have a BCG representative, we'll have a TCS representative, and we'll have one senior representation from Terry University. Over to you, Ishwari.
Okay, then, all right. Hello, guys. Thank you so much for joining and still being here. Okay, so the motive of this panel to discussion is we want to know or we want to understand how can we leverage India's net zero commitments or goals for actually the betterment of the this manufacturing sector. To delve into that, hopefully you will have a nice cup of chai with you. And to deep down with you, we have three wonderful panelists to talk about the three major aspects, that is gender equity, climate finance, and integration of clean tech. So to shed light upon how can we integrate gender into the manufacturing practices, we have Ms. Sudeshna Chaudhary. She's the owner of the TCS offering, which focuses on the climate centric scenario. And along with that, she is also a head of the Asia chapter for women in data. So hi Sudeshna, thank you so much for being here. Can you hear me?
Yes, am I audible?
Yes, you are. All right, Sudeshna. Thank you so much for being here. So to deep dive into climate finance, we have with a really great climate veteran, as we like to call him. So we have Mr. Vivek Adhya over here. He's the associate director at BCG, and he has worked with several think tanks and climate-based startups for them to reach the net zero vision. Thank you so much for being here, Vivek.
Thank you so much for having me here. Good evening, everybody.
Thank you. And to speak about the integration of clean tech and the policy angle, we have a very knowledgeable person with us. So, Mr. Shirish Karud is the senior director for renewable energy from TERI. He has a vast experience on integration of clean tech and how can we leverage policy frameworks to actually address net zero. Thank you so much for being here, Shirish sir.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Good evening, everybody.
Good evening. Okay, so we can start with this panel discussion. Okay, so until this point, we have heard a lot of points about net zero, decarbonization, how can we integrate clean tech, so many other things. But then the one key thing which everybody misses, and I would like to point it out, how can we integrate gender equity into the actual manufacturing cycle. So that is one thing nobody speaks about or hardly speaks about. But before coming to gender equity, I would like to deep dive into the policy aspect of things. So like recently, maybe in the last month, we have seen a great launch of National Green Hydrogen Mission. So according to me, there are many schemes like that, but hardly anybody knows how can they leverage it for themselves or their factory. So my question is for Shirish sir, is that how can the MSMEs can leverage such policies to help them reach towards their net zero goal? Over to you, Shirish sir.
Thank you. I think a very important point. See, net zero discussion has, come into picture very recently. Before that, we had energy efficiency, renewable energy integration, and emission reduction. And now we are looking towards net zero scenarios. And if you look at it, it is important that each and every citizen and each and every institute or organization, whether big or small, should be part of this mission. Then only it can be going to be a successful mission. It's not only government which is announcing policies and regulations for this, but it is everybody's responsibility to achieve this. If you look at the MSME sector per se, it is part of the larger chain of manufacturing industry, or industry per se is a supply and manufacturing. If you look at it now, and the we had a very good success stories of big companies just now, Tata Motors, and who are a visionary companies. So they have the vision that what future should be. So especially if you look at Tata Group, they started with steel industry way back in 1900. When that too, when you had a British Raj, and so for us, for an Indian a person to start an industry of that scale was really it has to be driven by the vision. So that vision continues, and as he mentioned, many activities they started before all this topics even not even discussed. So that is one aspect. But as a MSME, MSME is part of the value chain, and we have been doing a lot of studies for MSME, especially from the perspective of integrating renewable energy or clean energy in the operations. See, the MSME typically have issue because they are generally constrained on capital availability. They don't have extra capital available for doing something extra beyond the business as usual, and most of them get trapped in that business as usual scenario, and and then they don't find ways to go out of the way to look at all these aspects. But now because the MSME are part of the supply chain, and if you look at the carbon footprint monitoring and all, we have three scopes: scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3. Scope 1 and scope 2 are something which companies can do for themselves. Scope 3 is they have to tab or rope in their suppliers and rope in their vendors also, and rope in their their other partners like transporters, their shop owners, their ancillary units, their component suppliers, and automobile particularly has large number of such ancillary units. And most of these units have definitely they need electricity, which can come from renewables. And now this renewable electricity can come directly from their own rooftops, as shown by Minda and Tata Motors, or they can purchase this electricity through various means. Earlier, it was only, they have to buy electricity through the discoms. But now, open access, regulation has been passed. And that with that regulation, anybody having more than 100 kilowatt load can go for open access to buy green electricity, particularly. And this can be bought through discoms also, or through other supplier, generator of green electricity. So this is a major avenue to decarbonize your own, operations. The second, we have done a lot of audits for circularity and efficiency, resource efficiency, not only energy efficiency, but resource efficiency. So, for example, galvanizing units can use electricity and other resources more efficiently by some, designing and recovery of raw materials used like acids, etc. And then there are technologies available for that. And in one of our projects in Aurangabad and in Chennai, we actually carried out demonstration of these technologies for material recovery and circularity with the MSMEs. And all these technologies are now available. And also, along with that, SIDBI has Green Fund, where they can give loan and special funds. Companies which are looking for ESG funds in environment, social, and governance compliant fund. So they need to have, their suppliers also using these concepts of circularity and energy, green energy or clean energy. So there is a lot of opportunities for MSMEs to do that, and institutes like TERI can help them out also in how to go about it. So that is a message I would like to tell. And secondly, as you mentioned about hydrogen mission, hydrogen is basically looked upon as a fuel, as a raw material, and as an energy storage material. So as a fuel, it can be used in industries like direct burning of hydrogen. It can be used as a raw material in steel industry, for example, for reduction of steel ore. In cement also, it can be used for burning as a fuel. And other industries like petrochemical and fertilizers, they are using hydrogen as it is, as a raw material, and there they can be used. Apart from that, hydrogen, we are looking at green hydrogen industry per se, it by itself. So one can put electrolyzer and generate hydrogen and store it or supply it to various hydrogen users, or through CNG network, pipe gas network in cities. Hydrogen can be mixed with compressed natural gas to 18%, and that can be used, which will reduce its emission intensity of the and also improve its calorific value. So hydrogen mission has been launched, and the government has given specific funds for a variety of activities, including pilot projects, demo projects, research and development, and actually large-scale projects. So there are a variety of things happening at government end, and the industry has to come forward, and they need support in terms of, as mentioned earlier, you need to have a separate team for all these activities, but not necessarily you have to have a big team. You can have one nodal person, and you can take help from people like us who are in the field and who can advise you or guide you on proper ways to integrate renewables or integrate the sustainability and circularity in your operations. I'll stop here, and over to you.
Sure, sir. Thank you so much for your valuable insights. I think the points you made, how can we actually utilize the policy measures by doing some very, small practical things were helpful. The next question will be for Vivek to actually implement these, policies on ground. The mostly what we face is, the lack of funding, or, the lack of financial help to actually implement these things on ground. So how can you suggest that these people can bridge the gap for the clean tech implementation and finances? And do you have any real life case studies from India or for globally to actually support, that how they have managed to do it? Over to you, Vivek.
Thank you, Ishwari and Zahir and Megha and Horan, everybody at ISC for bringing me on this dais, on this panel. It's a privilege to come after such a respected stalwart, Shirish ji, and also share this stage with Sudeshna. I think maybe if I can just quickly set the context by sharing a couple of slides. Let me know if you all can see my slides. Ishwari, I think ultimately,
yes, we can see.
ultimately it all boils down to finance, and
Definitely.
we do have policy instruments, we do have the capacity gaps in MSMEs and stuff. uh, I think just as a flavor, what is happening here on green finance is there is always this comparison about who's doing better. Is it the BSC, is it the Nifty, is it the Green X, and invariably over the years we've seen organizations who have really embedded ESG and sustainability and equitable approaches have done well. Now, if you see the kind of investments that are coming through in recent years, both from international funds, multilateral funds, they've been rising very, very significantly. So, on one side, companies are doing well. On the other side, the fund coming into the climate context is also increasing very rapidly. We were just tracking some of the flows between 2016 and 18, and really some good research carried out by CPI and some of the other organizations. 248,000 crore green finance tracked. Most of it was in solar and wind, but you see those faint lines which come in with EVs and batteries and storage. This scene is changing very rapidly, and currently, if you see the last 5 years, bulk of the climate deals are happening in the transport space, in the automotive space. 90% went into transportation, energy, chemicals, and gas. Now, this really speaks volumes about the opportunity that all of us are sitting on board with. So this is where we really want to tap into the opportunities that's coming in. Startups which received funding are valued more than $7.5 billion. Again, 19 plus startups really getting in these kind of numbers and commercial funding. Now, what does it take to, really tap into some of these opportunities and things that are available? And I was so happy my colleagues from Tata Motors earlier shared about the GHG protocol and science-based targets initiative, right? So the first step is to measure and is to understand where your baseline is. And the moment you set up your goals or your targets, you know where you have to reach, what kind of reductions you need to achieve. But all of us, we are working with very thin margins and very thin resources to operate with. So how do you achieve net zero at the lowest possible cost? How do you get there? Amongst a plethora of options you might have, you can either fuel switch, you can, bring in energy efficiency, you can really look at process improvements, you can look at consumer awareness, and then doing a lot of other things there. But how do you do this at the lowest cost possible? And this is where something like carbon pricing comes in. Now, large companies are already pricing carbon and pricing the journey towards net zero. So they are really mapping the costs, and you may call it abatement curves, you may call it an internal carbon price, you may look at it from a shadow perspective. How do you price the journey and then look at different options and then select it based on how you might be able to get to that? Really helps lock in and tap into the climate finance opportunities that come in. So organizations, most leading organizations, Tata Motors, Mahindra, everybody has used carbon pricing as a big lever. They've mapped out of all kinds of project opportunities that they get, what seems to be the most economical or the right way to look at it. What is also important right now is to see, when we look at financing and when we look at some of the new technologies, the lens that investors are coming in, the lens that multilateral funds are coming in, the lens that governments are looking at for financing into some of these aspects. We do have some amazing policy instruments. For example, we have say vehicle efficiency standards, and that will significantly improve the sectoral decarbonization that we are looking at. But vehicle efficiency standards for now possibly do not look at air conditioning into the vehicles, and whether it is the ICE based ones or the electric ones, that percentage will have an impact on the overall emissions and the energy that's being consumed for that vehicle. And I've read somewhere, and I'm doing a little more research, is the battery consumption for an electric car when the air conditioning is on versus otherwise, there's a huge difference. I think 30 to 40% of the battery charge is consumed just to operate the air conditioning. So how do you optimize some of these things? And that's where investments are going, and that's where people are looking at different aspects. Of course, we have the domestic carbon market coming in. We have a flurry of funds that are outlined both by the MSME ministry, by SIDBI, by various other organizations. We've got mainstream banks coming up with really targeted products. So I really encourage everybody to look at all the plethora of options that exist. Once you've embarked on your journey on the measurement, the goal setting, the carbon pricing part, really understanding where the reduction is, what kind of policy instruments to tap onto, and then really tap into the most appropriate funding channel that's available, and happy to point out and support. The list is far too long in the initial reactions I'm giving right now, but happy to dive deeper and deliberate upon specific funding or investment pipelines. I'll pause here.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for such a deeper insight upon the financial landscape. How can we bridge this gap? Okay, so moving on from finance for now, moving to gender equity, as I said, it's a least talked about thing, especially on the shop floor, especially in the manufacturing sense, that we hardly see any women on the shop floor. So my next question will go to Sudeshna, of course. To ensure we reach this equitable net zero goal, what do you think the factories can do to achieve this gender equity? Like what steps can they take? The low hanging fruits, the all the small things they can think of doing to achieve this goal. Over to you, Sudeshna.
The most important, first of all, thanks, Ishwari, and good evening, everybody. The most important thing about this whole question of yours is the time we are in. And this is the time where there is an energy transition happening. And why it is important is the transition phase becomes very crucial for changing perceptions. There is nothing new that we need to know how gender equity can bring in a difference, be it access to the best available talent, be it strengthening team dynamics, reduce staff turnover, long-term relations, better work environment. We can have, a long list of things to mention, and that's known to everybody. But the point is that in spite of that, the type of job has always historically built a preconceived notion of the choice of profession by gender. So now let me give you some historical facts. Miss Ila Majumdar, she was the first mechanical engineer of West Bengal and one of the earliest mechanical women engineers in India. And she was born in 1930. She joined her mechanical engineering course in 1947, around 47, 48. So in her biography, I had read that she was the only girl in a class of 30, 40, whatever number of students. And that is in 1947, and which is pretty expected. And also from her selection perspective, she had selected engineering because she was given almost a challenge that girls are not made for engineering, you better study medical. And she had both options. She could not decide what to do, but because she was challenged, she went into engineering. Now, everybody is not like that. So what I want to bring to the point is she was the only girl in the whole class. And even after that, after 50 years later, when I was doing my graduation, in 1997, in that time frame, my roommate, she was the only mechanical engineer girl student in her class in a renowned university in Kolkata. So in all these 50 years, nothing has changed. And there has been no, generally speaking, a transition which the industry has gone through. And we have lived through our perceptions. If I talk of my own personal story, why to give others example? I was born and brought up in an industrial township. My father was an engineer. He was not a weightlifter. He was a normal human being. He was an engineer. I could have always thought that, okay, he is an inspiration for me to go for core engineering. I didn't do that because I was also part of that perception, though no, shop floors are not for women. They're not safe. Come on. Safety is for men too, right? So it existed. It existed even during when I was a student. But when I come in today's world, things are much, much better. We do have students who are studying mechanical engineering. They are getting into manufacturing, and not only in administrative roles, they are also getting into really hands-on. And that is why I was so thrilled when I think in last year during Women's Day, Tata Motors published a video on the all-women manufacturing story of Tata Harrier and SUV. So why it made me happy is the awareness aspect of it. The way the video clearly calls out how technology has helped them with machines and robots, where now the skill is more towards operating the machines and not lifting them. I mean, whatever that preconceived notion we have towards genders. It calls out how their safety security is taken care and how they manage shifts, etc. So all of this is so encouraging, and it stands out to inspire thousands and lakhs of more girls to offer such career options. So it's very important to really change the perception, not only to others, but the people who will be actually working there. Unless girls are convinced that they can do it, nobody can enable for them. So for energy transition, this is the right time when new types of jobs are coming up, and consciously bringing in gender equity into the space will benefit all of us. The manufacturing organization, the education system, and the ecosystem supporting this, organizations like ISC who are working towards consciously doing something so that we have more gender equity, and we have the skill set to really have the people work into these areas. And working towards this and bringing this change is what is the need of the day. That's all from me.
All right, Sudeshna, thank you so much for sharing such interesting, facts. And the part I, really like that, like even after all this time, from 1947 to here, the reality has not changed much. So yeah, I think this might be a really high time to do that. We will come back to the that aspect later. I'm going back to Vivek. Okay, so I would like to understand from you that what are the best uh, you know you know technological adaptation the MSME can make in least possible investment and least possible time for them to start their net zero journey. Like a specific case or a specific starting point you would like to mention regarding that.
My bad, Ishwari. I think there was a break in my connection. Would you repeat the question again?
Sure. So maybe one interesting innovation that can help the auto component manufacturers MSMEs to achieve their equitable net zero goal in the least possible time and possibly least possible financial investment as well. So
okay, yeah, I think multiple interesting innovations that I'm seeing within the sector. I'll try and touch upon a few in different dimensions. So when you look at innovation, the financial innovation example, India has been leading this globally, in terms of energy service companies, and how we were able to really use the ESCO model for energy transitions that we spoke about. A lot of this has been now flowing into the automotive sector, and one of my previous organizations really helped facilitate. So WRI and ESL helped facilitate the world's largest tender for e-buses that came in, and what this really does is this cuts back a lot of upfront investment that is required, and which in turn transitions the benefits all across the value chain, including MSMEs, OEMs, and manufacturers, to really get things moving. And the way you are able to then save on costs, emissions, and others, you are kind of paying back. The success of an ESCO model for an automotive space really depends on how we are able to structure the payment security mechanism, how we are able to tap onto the risk part of it and risk coverage part of it. Because unlike a clear-cut energy saving, where meters are installed and you're able to map out, and changing a light bulb versus upgrading a car is really different, and there needs to be specific context onto it. Something that we are now trying in India as a country, globally, there were a few pilots that were carried out. US actually did something called as cash for grubs scheme, where you could turn back a 10-year-old, 12-year-old, 15-year-old inefficient car in lieu of certain discounts or benefits that you would get. So ultimately, the fleet upgradation happens without real barriers kind of standing in way of that fleet upgradation, because you may have best of the policy instruments, you may have financing, but unless you influence the consumers to upgrade the entire fleet that's been running on ground, we may not see those benefits and those challenges being addressed. Of course, on the manufacturing side within MSMEs, a lot of plug-and-play mechanisms are coming up. So rather than MSMEs using individual standalone boilers, 2-ton, 3-ton, 1.5-ton boilers, there is a replica of district heating and community heating coming in, and of course we've been hearing about steam house and many other such examples. So I think it's phenomenal to see these kind of aspects really coming to light on ground, and being available at the drop of a hat, which probably we would not have envisaged before, and with vehicle scrapping policies in India, with steel recycling policies in India, with EVs, and with all the other incentives that's coming up. I think this is our moment in the sun, and we should really come up with many more successful examples. But I hope these have been useful and helpful to just kind of give a flavor of what's happening on ground.
All right. Thank you so much, Vivek, for the very nice examples. I would like to extend the same question to Sudeshna as well. Do you think any latest technology or like any something innovation of any step in the manufacturing processes can help increase the gender equity, or the participation of women in the manufacturing sector as of now?
See, in terms of, as I was saying, there are so many innovations which are really looking more at the safety security perspective. Those can be called out. But personally, I have a belief that sometimes we really discriminate a good process and a bad process and say that, okay, this is not safe for women. Actually, that is for the betterment of everybody. So I don't consider that any particular process is really helps in gender equity. So the example I was giving, I never got the encouragement to work in a shop floor seeing my father. I was not inspired. One of the reason was not only the bias, but the reason also was the environment. The reason also was the accidents I used to hear in my early days as a kid into the blast furnace. Now, when it comes to a safety security, and those were the things used saying, okay, you shouldn't work because it's unsafe. Come on, if a blast furnace is sucking a person, it doesn't choose a woman, right? So the processes which are really technology is helping, there is surveillance, there is monitoring, there are safety features, those are really helping in diversifying our workforce. But it is meant for the betterment of the whole workforce, not only for a particular segment. That is my viewpoint.
Okay. All right. And do you think introducing automation in the manufacturing chain as of now, can it help increase the participation of women? Like, for example, just an thing I'm stating that in 2021 of September, Ola actually said that they would hire around 8,000 women on their shop floor just on the basis of all the things were kind of less manual and more automated. So according to you, these kind of changes or interventions, does that help in participation of women on the shop floor?
See, if you, the video I was mentioning, if you look at the Tata Harrier video, which Tata Motors has published, the way the girls explain the ease of working, ease of working that they have achieved after automation, after robots coming in, is amazing. And that is why they're opting to come into the industry. But the point I want to make it is, be it due to any reason, the technology advancement is not only for women. It is also not safe, or it is for human brain should be used to its best. Human brain is not for men, are not designated weightlifters. We have designated them with that caption, but we have not asked them whether you want to do it. Even they don't want to do it. They want to use their skill to its best. So yes, automation is helping women to opt for their career into engineering, into manufacturing shop floors. But the technology is being benefited by everybody.
Right. Just one last small question to you, Deshna. How can hiring a woman be a profitable case study for a MSME manager or an owner? How can he actually profit by hiring a women employee?
So again, the profit aspect comes that, see, immediately when you remove the bias of not hiring women, you get another 50% of the workforce to evaluate. So then you evaluate based on the skill set, the capability the person has, and not on the gender. So that is a very direct mapping, and we all know, and all of you are experts in hiring and skill development. So you all know that what it means to have a person with proper capability, because there is a 12 years of education which comes behind that. You cannot really create people and create skilled people overnight. So that is where the profit comes, and not for out of any regulatory compliance or by complying to SDG 5 and getting all those certifications, etc. It just comes from the level of skill set that you are getting and the productivity you are getting out of it.
All right. Thank you so much for sharing your insights, Deshna. So we have got a lot of interesting things to hear, a lot of insights. We are here for the last question of this session, and that will go to Shirish sir. So, sir, so we have been speaking about the automation and the new things which are coming. So, can you throw some light on how new innovative systems the automotive component manufacturing units can adopt at a commercial scale that can help towards making them profit, plus it can help them towards the net zero movement.
Thank you, Ishwari. I think the innovation is happening now everywhere. Manufacturing, handling, transportation, every aspect of business innovation is happening, and the innovation is happening because it gives a lot of benefits. That is why people are adopting it. And if you are not adopting it, your competitors must be adopting it because they want to be ahead of you. And one has to look into what is best for their own activities and own businesses, because innovation, automation is happening in manufacturing. It needs investments, but it also improves your efficiency, your output, your quality, and your reliability of the operation. So, the same way you can improve your energy efficiency by using solar energy. Say, for example, for heating and cooling applications, solar thermal can be used. As I mentioned earlier, electricity can be used. We have a lot of very small, industries which are using biomass gasifier instead of normal biomass, which they were using for, say, foundry applications or heating, press applications. And now they are using biomass gasification system, which improves the efficiency of the biomass utilization, and also it is more eco-friendly. And thereby they are saving their expenses and they are also getting better quality. Like that, as I mentioned earlier, galvanizing also is now improved with a lot of technology interventions to recover the material, recover the acids, other chemicals in the processes, reduce the water losses, reduce the energy losses. So one has to constantly look into what new is happening in my field and what new I can adopt. And as mentioned earlier, there are a lot of financing schemes, funding schemes which are available. Your principal OEM can also help you out on this, because it is in their interest also that they get a cheaper and better quality, consistent product. So it's a chain of relationships from top to bottom between the industries, which can help each other and grow and become sustainable and slowly go towards net zero.
Thank you so much, sir, for your insights. I think it's been really insightful to hear about a lot of different, perspectives, all the major facts, all the charts, all the graphs, all the numbers. I think it's been a really interesting session. Okay, so with this, we end this panel discussion. We have one last poll for you to answer. So, Huren, can you please launch the third and the last poll? Okay, so we have around 30 seconds to fill this. I would like to request all of you to fill the poll. Okay, so how can we increase women's participation in decarbonization process of automotive component manufacturing? Okay, so the most percentage has gone to inclusion of green skilling programs at the educational level, and the close second is I think the way we have written these options, they also show the level from top to bottom. That's a very weird coincidence. But yeah, the highest points will go to inclusion of green skilling and to make male workers and the factory workers aware, and the tools and policies and transportation stands at equal. All right then, thank you so much for your participation. I think this ends our panel discussion, but I have one question for Shirish sir. It is one of the last question. While we are talking about MSMEs shifting to sustainable manufacturing practices, I would like to bring attention to another form of low carbon clean energy transition that's been happening in auto sector through the shift from ICE EV to EV. So how can the MSMEs in ICE supply chain can adapt themselves, equipped with the important skills so that they they are not left behind, like in this change, in this transition. And to add to that, how can we particularly support MSME workers and women so that they are not left out in this transition? Like any insights, not from just you, but from all the speakers would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Meghanath. I think this is a very important question because when such a transition is happening, the industries have to undergo real like a DNA change, because IC engine to EV is a big shift, and EV needs entirely different range of components and also very less number of components as compared to IC engine. And from that perspective, if company has to shift, of course there are certain companies which will be there, like tire companies or seat manufacturing or steering wheel manufacturing and all the bearing manufacturing, they will remain the same, but there will be some critical component like engine manufacturing. So one has to then probably look at from IC engine to BLDC motors, because now as per the FEM policy, the original manufacturers have to manufacture the motors and critical components. So one of the, I think, another but important aspect is there are quite a new technologies one will have to adopt. For example, the controls for battery charging and safety and others, or the security systems, or the guidance systems. There are a number of variants which are coming, and with different vehicles, different variants. Everybody is coming with their own variety. And while there is a there are less number of components, but there are now more number of manufacturers which are coming in picture. Particularly two-wheelers, if you look at two-wheelers, and then there are additional features like Wi-Fi and battery charging, cameras for safety, automatic tracking, guidance systems, so many things. So one has to invest in these new technologies and new talent. Same IC engine talent may not work there, but there is a good opportunity. If you are already in business, you know the people, you know the environment, you can adopt it better than somebody new coming in and taking the place. So I think that flexibility has to be there. So you may have to shift from mechanical oriented activities to more towards electronic oriented or software oriented activities, but one need to do that shift because that is the transition happening.
Okay, Sudeshna, would you like to add some points into it?
Yeah, I want to add a different perspective on top of what Sir said. It's not the training. Training is same for everybody, but for specifically for women, the consideration comes, at least the kind of society we have till now, whenever it comes to a question of cross-skilling or upskilling, the time management part of it, while you are already working, prioritizing that you need that upskilling, that becomes very important. That change management is important. The ecosystem supporting that is very important. And the necessity behind it, then rather than going into something which you are not opting for, which you don't prefer, you don't want to stay back with, but you are just doing it to compromise with your other responsibilities. Rather than that, equally thinking of that upskilling or cross-skilling opportunity, going into those trainings, and then eventually getting into the new role. So that movement, and that is, same in every industry, that supporting that movement is where we have to focus on, so that we can enable them to execute that. Otherwise, it won't be a success.
Okay, great. I think we have gathered a lot of insights. The floor is now open for question and answer. I think there is one question. Okay, so how do startups willing to tackle the GHG emissions from transportation? Where is this global emission of 8 billion metric ton of CO2 present? Affordable scope 3 emission reduction ideation, reach out to the concerned transport authorities of India. This is the question for especially to Shirish sir and Rick is unfortunately not there.
I'm just trying to understand the question.
Okay.
GHG emission from
you can-
transport, where this is global emission? Yes, transportation is one of the, because it is entirely so far more or less entirely dependent on fossil fuel, and reduction is happening in 2-3 ways. One is electrical vehicles. Second is the use of ethanol or alternate fuels in the IC engines, and third is of course use of hydrogen fuel cell or direct hydrogen in the vehicle, and of course the hybridization of different type of vehicles, EV plus petrol or EV plus flexible fuels and all. So as a startup, you are, if you are working on engine part of it or you are working on EV part of it, I will say you can reach out to the the authorities, transport authorities are now aware, and the policies are in place, like FAME 2, or production link incentives and other initiatives. Some states are also have their own EV policies and things. So I think the concerned transport authorities are already in picture and they are driving these changes. It is the users and the service providers which can be tackled into. For example, if you can see now, Ola is coming up with its own EV, and then their own fleet they are changing from normal petrol bikes to the EV bikes. So there are a lot of these kind of opportunities for new startup to look into from EV perspective, and they can have their own fleet operations. So different business models and different ideas are coming up. I think I will stop there. I hope I have answered the question. My email, I will share it here on the chat box. Somebody wants it.
Yes, so the mail ID can be accessed through the chat box. The question has been simplified for you to standardize eco-driving activities amongst the commercial vehicles. What platform would be helpful to present it to the concerned authorities? That is the simplified version of the first question that was asked.
Form would be helpful to present this idea to concerned authorities to standardize eco-driving activities among commercial vehicles. Basically, well, you can have um, presentation or even social media, professional social media platforms like LinkedIn, where you can, talk about your idea or product or this thing. I think that's the way you can reach to the concerned authorities if you have any issue. I think that the government is also quite open about this. Ministries are open. They have the my government platform is there where you can share your ideas or your concerns with the ministries or even with the Prime Minister's office through email, and you will get definitely you will get response on that. Yeah. My
Okay.
email I have shared here on the with the host and panelists, so you can share it with the attendees. I can't do that probably.
Sure, sir. Sure. We will do that. Okay. So do we have any more questions for the two panelists?
Yes, Ishwari, I wanted to ask Sudeshna one question. Sudeshna, there is this green labeling, I mean, to basically label the products or maybe incentivize the industries who are making sustainable products, right? I mean, that it is going on. Is it possible to have such kind of incentivize or kind of a credit system wherein companies who are promoting women participation or let's say women recruitment or let's say their involvement on the shop floor of MSMEs, is it a good idea or is it kind of very exclusive and away from the normalized industrial operations? What are your thoughts?
See,
Is
that
it
is
possible to
already there.
incentivize the companies? Yeah.
Yeah, that is already there, and group companies internally also incentivize in that manner. Say, for example, if I consider the utilities sector, I was into that for around 7-8 years. In utilities sector, when they are specifically committing on a SDG 5 goal, which is the gender equality goal, and say 50% by 2030 or 2040, whatever they are committing for their own organization, to reach to that target, they are incentivizing. So that model can be applied anywhere. And that is how it is. But compliance really cannot drive what is actually needed. It is to bring equal capabilities on the table. It should not be force-fitted. So incentivize is okay, but the main essence should be retained. That's very important.
Okay. Thanks, Sudeshna.
Okay. So do we have any more questions from the participants? Okay, so I think this draws this session to the close. Thank you everybody for joining, for taking out their time. Thank you, Shirish sir. Thank you, Sudeshna, for coming here on this platform to offer such a great insight. So thank you so much for that. This draws this session to the close. I would like to thank all the panelists who joined, all the team of ACMA, Dinesh sir specifically for his support, for his constant encouragement to us, and of course all the audience who joined us today to actually learn and understand these great insights. Thank you so much for joining. We have this series to be continued, so we are planning to do multiple sessions based on this concept of net zero and how can we integrate equitable decarbonization and make it more mainstream across the automotive industry. We will keep you posted regarding the details of the future series. So yeah, until then, thank you so much for joining and have a really great evening. Just before you go, one small favor. We would like to know what topics will interest you for the next series of our lectures. So like a small survey will appear on your window. When you close, we request you to fill that survey to help us understand what topics should we cover next. Thank you so much and have a great day and have a great evening. Thank you.